The fourth way, Chapter 15. And this is a continuation of Chapter 15. Question: what is the difference between forgiving and being forgiven? Answer: subject and object. But we cannot be forgiven. We did something, and according to the law of cause and effect, a certain result will be produced. We cannot change the law, but we can become free, escape from it. We can change the present, through the present, the future, and through the future, the past. We must pay our debts. By paying them, we change the past. But there are different ways of paying. Question: what are the different ways of paying our debts? Answer: mechanically or consciously. We pay them in any case, by waiting for the results of causes and paying thus, or by changing the past and paying in another way. Today is the result of some past. If we change today, we change the past. Question: is changing the past struggling against the way things go? Answer: this is the beginning only. Positive emotions and higher influences are necessary. We cannot change anything without them. There are several stages. This does not come at once. It is necessary to work. I have put some principles. It is necessary to see how we can reach this. There are many interesting things in this. For instance, there is no word I or me in the Lord's Prayer. That means there can be no personal favors. All people stand in the same relation to higher forces. All need the same things. And that concludes Chapter 15. I didn't realize it was such a short section. Okay, so let's start Chapter 16 now and see how far we get. We'll just do a little bit of it and see how far we get. Okay. I constantly get questions referring to recurrence, so I want to say something about it, which may give you material for thinking. There are two reasons why I avoid speaking about it. First, we can only talk about the theory. We have no real facts about it. And secondly, we do not know whether in connection with the work, the laws referring to recurrence change. It is necessary to understand these things. We know very little about recurrence. Someday we may try to collect what can be taken as reliable and all that is written about recurrence and see which way we can think about it. But this is only a theory. And then Ouspensky goes on to say, I wrote in A New Model of the Universe long ago that even in ordinary life, people may be very different in relation to recurrence. Some people may have exactly the same recurrence, and other people may have different variations or possibilities. Some may go up and others may go down, and many other things. But this is without relation to the work. In the case of people who come nearer to the work, it may be possible, though only theoretically, to study 3 successive recurrences. Let us suppose the first is when one comes close to the possibility of meeting with some kind of ideas of higher mind. The second, when one definitely comes in contact with C influence. And the third, which would be the result of it. The interesting thing is that after the second, the possibilities of recurrence greatly diminish. Before one comes into contact with C influence, they look unlimited, but after this contact, the possibility of recurrence is reduced. If we understand that, we will be able to speak about recurrence with a certain amount of reason and profit. Otherwise, if we take everything on the same plane, it'll just be theoretical talk and quite useless. Question. Do you mean that after coming in contact with C influences, the number of chances diminish? Answer. Yes, because C influence cannot be wasted. B influences are practically unlimited. This means that they are thrown into life and one can take or not take them. They do not diminish, but C influence is limited. Try to answer this question for yourself and you will understand why the possibility of receiving C influence must be limited. Because if one does not make use of it, what is the good of wasting it? Question. Does it mean that if we worked in the right way, our chances would increase? Answer. No, it does not mean that at all. It merely means that if we do not work in the right way, we will lose the possibility of these chances recurring. Without this additional feature I have just mentioned, it's quite useless to speak about recurrence even as a theory. In thinking about recurrence, it's useful to think about what is possible and what is impossible, what can happen and what cannot happen. Generally, people either do not accept this idea or do not know about it or do not understand it or else accept too much, put too much into it. So it's useful to think in what relation we stand to it. And for this, we must have a basis from which to start. For instance, it refers to remembering. People often ask about remembering past lives, but they forget that without the work of higher centers, they cannot. Very often, you hear people say, chiefly in connection with what they call reincarnation, that they can remember their lives in previous reincarnations. And they write books about that, about what was before, about what they were before. This is pure fantasy. You must understand that in our ordinary state, we cannot remember past lives. There is nothing to remember with. In our mind and centers, it is all new. What may pass from one life to another is essence. So, one can only have such vague sensations instead of definite recollections. That is hard to suppose that anyone can remember anything concrete. Only in the first years of life is it really possible. But then one generally does not notice this feeling, or if one does, it creates imagination. And I'm going to pause here, and I'd like to throw in my 2 cents here. First of all, I think it's quite possible to remember past lives. Just because Ouspensky says it isn't, and maybe that's based on what Gurdjieff says, it is possible to remember past lives. Now, some people can't remember them consciously, like when in normal consciousness. So say beta wavelength, consciousness. But if one goes into trance and one connects more deeply with the subconscious, one can remember past lives. And some people can even remember it in a normal state of consciousness. I'm reading another book right now here on YouTube. It's called Many Lifetimes. And it's written by a psychiatrist, Dennis Kelsey, and his wife, Joan Grant. Now, Dennis Kelsey is very interested in reincarnation. I mean, once he discovered that, using hypnosis, getting people into trance using hypnosis and eliciting information from their subconscious can actually help them in this lifetime. And at some point he met his wife, Joan Grant, and Joan Grant was, they've now both passed, but Joan was a psychic, and she wasn't just any old psychic. She was really, par excellence. She could, in normal conscious reality, see the past lives of other people. So sometimes when he would get stuck, on a case, working with a client that he was trying to help, he would call in Joan, and she would be able to actually see the person's past lives and give information on them that might help in their current state. And so this isn't fantasy. Just because Ouspensky doesn't know about it, I would really argue with him and Gurdjieff, this is not fantasy. Also, I would like to point out that when people pass from this lifetime on the earth plane, they are still sometimes, not always, but sometimes reachable through psychics, through mediums, and they can comment on things that are far vaster than we, as normal human beings, are aware of. So, no, I just don't agree with this. Anyhow, if you have an opinion on this, leave it below. I'd love to hear it, to read about it. Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm going to let it go there, and we'll continue next time, okay? Till soon.